Test 4. This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to part 1. Part 1. You will hear a student from overseas phoning the student accommodation office of a college in the UK for some information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
College Accommodation Office, Darren speaking. How may I help you?
Oh, good morning. I am starting at the college in September and need to find some accommodation.
Right. Well, there is a list of options. The first one is to live on campus, and that'd be a single room.
How much would that cost?
Well, it depends. You'll be expected to cover £3,276 for a standard room for the year. That's just for a room with a wash basin. And it'll be £3,834 if you want a regular suite equipped with a small bathroom.
I see. That's a bit over what I expected.
It does include heating, which is quite a saving because energy costs can be high these days, especially in winter.
Does it include meals as well?
No. All our rooms are self-catering now, but there is a shared kitchen on each floor where you can cook if you want to. Or there are plenty of places to eat out on campus.
OK. And you mentioned that is the price for the whole year?
Well, you pay annually, but actually it's just for 36 weeks. It doesn't include holidays. You'll have to vacate the room then.
Oh, I need somewhere for the holidays. It'll be a long way home and the flights are too expensive.
Well, there is another option. Several families who work at the college or have children studying here offer overseas students a room in their homes.
Oh, tell me about it.
We call this arrangement Home Welcome, and we've still got a few places left at the moment. You pay £150 per week, and that includes breakfast, a packed lunch and dinner, as well as heating.
Is there a contract? Do you have to stay for the whole year?
No, it's flexible.
It sounds perfect, but I'm not sure. I want to be a little more independent. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10. Is there somewhere available off campus?
Yes, you can rent a property in town privately. You might want to rent a room in a shared house. You'd have a room and a shared kitchen and bathroom with other tenants.
What about if I don't want to share?
you can get what we call a studio. They are often relatively small, but they'll have everything you need.
Right. How much would those two options be?
Well, prices vary depending on which part of the town the property is in. Generally speaking, the cheapest is around £275 a month for each student.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yes, but it can also be up to £490, and you still have to pay all your other bills.
What sort of amount would I be looking at for those?
Last year, students were paying on average about £43 per month for gas and electricity. This year, it would probably be somewhere in the region of £48.
That's a lot.
Yes, they've gone up quite a bit. And on top of that, you have to pay for water, which would probably be around £9.
That didn't occur to me. And I guess I'd have to pay for transportation too.
That's right. Most of these properties are quite a long way from the college.
Oh, it just gets worse and worse. What's the minimum contract for this type of accommodation?
6 months, and you have to pay a deposit up front. But of course, you can stay there over the holidays.
That's true.
And you'd have to provide references. They want 2 from someone in this country.
I see. That's not a problem.
If you prefer this accommodation, we can't find the property for you. You'd have to contact the real estate agent who manages the property for the owner.
Right, thanks. I'd like to see what's available privately. Could you give me the real estate agent details? That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2. You will hear a tour guide introducing a park in New Zealand to a group of visitors. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Welcome to our lovely tour around Hobson Park. Visible from much of Auckland, this is a widely recognised local landmark. I hope you'll enjoy your stay here. But first, let me briefly introduce its history to you before we stroll around the park. Hobson Park is located on an island that used to be a volcano, which emerged just 600 years ago. You can still enjoy the breathtaking views of a nearby lake today. The lava flow at the end of Takapuna Beach enveloped a kauri forest. It is known to be New Zealand's only example of a fossil forest preserved in a lava flow. Actually, Hobson Park was named after William Hobson, a British captain and also the first governor of New Zealand. At the time, the British were making plans to claim New Zealand as a colony to ensure their trade interest. War broke out between Maori troops and government forces. After years of revolt, 2 Maori chiefs were invited to the island to restore peace. They signed a treaty and shook hands with Governor Hobson. While local tribes started to celebrate their success, the two Maori chiefs didn't stop promoting Maori self-determination in meetings and correspondence with the government. In 1840, Hobson chose Auckland as the site for his capital. The same year, plans for founding Hobson Park were initiated, but it was in 1842 that the park was actually created and officially opened to the public. As you can see, the park is immense. It is comprised of many natural wonders as well as artificial features. Just a few hundred meters away, there is a duck pond where you can observe the waterbirds, including some rare breeds. But remember to keep a distance from them and refrain from feeding them. Across the iron bridge, you'll get to formal gardens used for experiments on breeding local wild species. If you keep roaming down the trail, you'll see the old residence of Maori people forming a small village. These houses are full of local paintings, sculptures, and artifacts, all donated by the city council to showcase the history and culture of Maori people living there. And these are not something you'll stumble upon in a regular museum. Oh, and don't forget to visit the Temperate House. It's only a 10-minute walk away from the duck pond. It accommodates a whole range of wild plants from around the country. But what makes it unique is the forest of kauri trees, a native species to New Zealand. However, the kauri tree population was threatened by the spread of kauri dieback disease and is now under the protection of the Department of Conservation.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Let me point out the whereabouts of some other critical features in the park in case you need them. If you are a plant lover and want to take some local greenery home, you may wish to visit the plant nursery, where you can choose from an extensive collection of plants, from succulents to some rare local species. It's right next to the museum on the same side of the road. There is a pine tree hill with tracks for hikers of all abilities. The whole trip takes about half an hour. There is a steep climb in places. Tread carefully and stick to the formal tracks. You'll be rewarded with great views. If you leave your car in the car park, you can see it just across the road towards George Street entry. Or, if you are an experienced hiker and want some challenge, you can choose Eagle Mountain. It offers fantastic hiking routes. It's also an ideal spot for birdwatching, with many wild species unique to New Zealand. We are right here, at the Wellington entrance. Then take the first right, and you'll see Eagle Mountain immediately to your right. If you're hungry and want to take a quick bite, there is a nearby food kiosk providing snacks and beverages. Start from the Wellington entrance, take the first left, keep walking down the road, and after the junction, where it meets a road connecting the George Street entry, you'll see it on your right. And lastly, there is a conservation area protecting kauri trees just by the winter garden. Unfortunately, it's currently out of bounds to the public. Okay, now, if you have anything else to ask, I'm here to help.
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 2. Part 3. You will hear two students called Shona and Peter discussing their internship options. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Shona.
Hi, Peter. Have you made up your mind about which internship program to apply for?
Yes, pretty much.
I'm entirely at a loss. I mean, there are so many good ones. Can you give me some tips?
Sure.
What is your top priority when weighing up these programs?
Well, I guess I'd go for ones that can help me with the skill set I lack for my future career. I still need a lot of practical training in dealing with statistics. But keep in mind that you don't want to set your goal too grand, like drawing up a business plan. You might end up nowhere.
I see. So I want to learn how to organize ideas and present them.
Good. Now you've nailed step 1.
Now what?
You must also consider your strengths for a suitable internship program. Otherwise, you might get rejected or end up with one that you are incapable of doing.
But I have no idea what I'm good at.
Communicate with people around you or whom you've worked with. That's what I did. I thought I was a good team leader, but many people I've worked with for various projects mentioned something else. They admire that I could work around the clock to finish projects on time. And indeed, I'm more focused and perform better when I'm pushed for time.
Good point. So what do you plan to do next?
I'll visit the careers officer to help me with the school application form. You know, the one we have to submit before applying to companies.
But it is unnecessary to fill it in. It's only optional.
Really? I'm glad I heard from you. Then I'll ask the careers officer to look at my personal statement and give me some tips on polishing it up.
Don't you need help with your CV?
No, I'm good. I have already learned to write it in class.
That's good. So what kind of company did you choose?
I've decided to apply for an IT company.
Why is that?
Well, even though I've learned how the IT industry developed in the past from different lectures, I know nothing about its latest trends. I'm prepared to work in an IT company and fill in the information gap.
I see. What do you plan to do next term?
I think I'll stick to most of the optional modules I've chosen, but regarding the language sessions, I'm doing poorly in Japanese. I'd better drop it before wasting more time. I think I'll learn Spanish instead.
Oh, I learned Spanish for a year. I think you'll find it interesting. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30. Do you know what job opportunities these companies offer interns?
I've searched online and browsed some of the schemes. Do you know SIEC?
Yes, I heard they offer internship positions dealing with customer interaction management, but I'm not quite sure what that means.
Well, the position offers the chance to become fully aware of customer value and keep in touch with customers to keep them highly engaged and satisfied. These include activities such as PR, communications, marketing, and customer service.
Sounds like loads of work to do. What about Gemini Technologies?
It's an IT consulting company. Although many employees say it's stressful working there, I want to apply for this one.
Why is that?
Actually, the company provides service to improve software architecture. But that's pretty demanding, as a team of software engineers has to provide detailed analysis and suggestions for required changes before the deadline. As an observer and participant of a particular project, an intern can learn how to work to a strict deadline.
That's not my area of expertise, but I'm sure you'll excel at this.
I certainly do hope so. Have you checked out Deloitte?
Of course, that's a renowned accounting firm, and thus its internships offer excellent learning experiences in this regard. You know, things like examining a company's financial statements, the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. I want to give it a try, but I might get rejected, so I need a backup plan. Have you read anything about Kearney?
Yes, it is another consulting firm. It provides opportunities to reach out to other business partners and pay attention to networking.
Well, that sounds interesting.
I'm thinking about Vortex, but I haven't got anything useful from its website.
I worked there last summer. It's an international company with headquarters in Spain, so most of the managers here speak Spanish. Thanks to the internship experience, I became fluent in it.
Right, that's not for me.
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 3.
Part 4. You will hear part of a lecture about a Japanese museum comprised mainly of underground space. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
For the last few sessions, we've been looking at the different architecture for both their utilitarian purposes and aesthetic features as well. In today's lecture, I want to continue this series by first introducing to you a unique underground museum in Japan. And then we'll discuss the pros and cons of underground architecture. Now, this museum was built in 1996, and around 80% of the museum is buried underground to preserve the lush natural beauty. It houses an impressive collection of artworks. The exhibits consist of works from ancient civilizations, including the Egyptians, Romans, and various Asian cultures, with the pieces mainly coming from the founder's private collection. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the museum is the design of its structures and how they are integrated into their natural surroundings. The museum is humbly embedded in mountains, close to a subway station connecting the nearest metropolis in about an hour. The design was inspired by an ancient Chinese story titled Peach Blossom Valley. The architect read it when he was a schoolboy. It is about a fisherman who loses his way and his boat carries him upstream. He is drawn into a cave by the fragrant scent of a forest of blossoming peach trees. After travelling through a narrow road behind the cave, the man finds an idyllic village amid the splendid view. The museum has been conceived as a real-world version of this village. Visitors must pass through a tunnel first and then a cable bridge suspended over a gorge before arriving at the museum. The museum's details reflect the designer's innovative endeavour to break new ground. The architect changed the design numerous times to ensure the building was in harmony with the natural landscape. It becomes evident as tourists walk around the building as the detail is very fastidious and makes for a unique experience. Once visitors enter the museum, a sloping roof made of wide expanses of glass draws their attention right away. The web-like structure filtered the light through and scattered it across the surface, making visitors feel like being outside with a vibrant backdrop of seasonal colours. It is now clear that underground buildings have many advantages over traditional above-ground houses, and many architects are looking into the possibilities of this type of subsurface structure. The most important advantage of these houses, especially in the current scenario of environmental degradation, is that they can better preserve indigenous flora and fauna. But the advantages of underground architecture go beyond that. For one thing, the earth surrounding the homes absorbs noise and thus provides natural soundproofing, creating a quiet living space with privacy. Choosing an underground house will be peaceful and calming, even in a noisy region. Moreover, there is less part of underground houses that can catch fire. For the most part, wood is no longer needed for building a home underground. The concrete foundations and metal structures of these homes all ensure good fireproofing. Now, underground houses also have the potential to save energy in the long run, as they can tap the Earth's heating or cooling power. The Earth's temperature doesn't vary as much as the temperature of the air outside. It ensures that even though the climate outside fluctuates between extremes, the conditions inside the subterranean homes remain more or less stable. However, there are also concerns over earth-sheltered homes. There may be a psychological adjustment needed for a person shifting from a traditional above-ground house to an underground house. Many people feel there is insufficient space in underground buildings, but in fact, these people also admit that they often visit shopping centres located in the basement and did not feel claustrophobic. In addition, underground houses cannot be built in regions experiencing flooding due to their unique geographical location. And even for areas that are suited for underground structures, drainage should be planned carefully to prevent moisture retention. While the advantages far outnumber their drawbacks, it may be a good idea to wait a little longer for these houses to come mainstream.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you will now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.